I'm Dr. Lena Popovic, and after 30 plus years in medical practice, I realised there's a lot missing from modern medicine. Education is more powerful than medication, and our decisions have more impact than our DNA. Last week, I finished with the question, what drugs, other than antibiotics, disrupt our gut microbiota, the trillions of microorganisms that live in our digestive tract? i.e., which other medicines are known to be microbial disruptors? If you haven't listened to last week's episode, I strongly encourage you to do so because it gives you the foundations of what I'll speak about today. An obvious contender is antacids, or heartburn medications, which are drugs that reduce stomach acid production to treat reflux. Decades of research have established a strong link between acid suppression, gastrointestinal changes, no surprises there, and mental health, especially in relation to the class of drugs known as proton pump inhibitors, PPIs. Because healthy stomach acid acts as a sterile shield that kills ingested pathogens and bacteria. When the environment becomes less acidic, bacteria from the mouth and upper respiratory tract survive the journey downward. And this creates a phenomenon known as oral-to-gut translocation, where oral species like Streptococcus aggressively colonize the small and large intestines. And by allowing excess bacteria to survive and multiply in the duodenum and jejunum, chronic PPI usage frequently triggers what's known as small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO. And stool analyses show that long-term PPI use significantly lowers what scientists call alpha diversity, i.e. the total variety of helpful bacterial species in the microbiome goes down. And as you know, a less diverse gut microbiome leaves the digestive tract vulnerable to opportunistic infections like C. diff. Interestingly, sadly, PPIs have also been found to lead to depression. How do they do that? By disrupting the production of serotonin and other neurotransmitters, impeding the uptake of vitamin B12, magnesium, zinc, and iron, and contributing to the development of a leaky gut and low-grade systemic inflammation. The worst two drugs in this category appear to be lansoprazole and pantoprazole. And logically, the higher the dose and the longer you've been taking them, the greater the likelihood of mood changes. People taking PPIs continuously for over a year exhibit a significantly greater risk of depression than those using short 2 to 4 week courses. Another big class of microbial disruptors is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, referred to as NSAIDs. These are so common. They are the most common medications used for pain that involves tissue inflammation or swelling. You'll know them as ibuprofen, e.g. Advil, Nurofen, Motrin, naproxen, indomethacin, diclofenac, Voltaren, and so on. And because they interact directly with intestinal mucosa, they profoundly alter the composition of gut bacteria. So only take them when absolutely necessary and for as short a time as possible. And yet other microbial disrupting medications include, I'm just going to list them so you're aware of them, metformin, a widely used medication for type 2 diabetes, antidepressants and benzodiazepines. Psychiatric medications can have profound and long-lasting effects on the gut microbiome, even years after use. Statins, cholesterol-lowering drugs, chemotherapy drugs, radiotherapy, and even laxatives can be microbial disruptors because they speed up gut transit time, which then prevents beneficial microbes from properly establishing themselves in your gut. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should abruptly stop taking any of these medications if you're on them. I'm just letting you know that there's a lot more to good gut health than food. All medications come with side effects, so use them judiciously. And that's not a complete list, but it covers the most common offenders when it comes to our gut. Moving along to what else affects our gut microbiome. Have you had your tonsils removed? Having a tonsillectomy permanently changes how your digestive tract interacts with microbes, because our tonsils act as the body's gatekeepers. They sample swallowed or inhaled pathogens, and then they train the immune system on how to respond. So without tonsils to flag and capture microorganisms at the entrance of the gut, undetected or unneutralized pathogens can travel further down the digestive path. And population studies have noted that the absence of tonsils correlates with a high risk of developing small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, and irritable bowel syndrome later in life. What makes this all the worse is that patients requiring a tonsillectomy usually have a history of severe recurrent tonsillitis and therefore lots of courses of antibiotics as well. The younger you are when you have your tonsils out, the earlier you're at risk of gut issues. But even having tonsils out after the age of 50 leads to an increase in irritable bowel syndrome. Have you had your appendix out? The human appendix was traditionally viewed as a functionless vestigial remnant. We now know that nothing could be further from the truth. Our appendix is, in fact, a vital component of both our immune system and our digestive tract. How it works is that the appendix is a narrow, blind-ended tube coated in protective bacterial biofilms. And when you have a severe bout of food poisoning or cholera infection or heavy course of antibiotics, the microbes in your colon get flushed out. But the microbes in your appendix remain shielded. And once the illness passes, the appendix reseeds and repopulates the large intestine with healthy microbial strains. Without an appendix, your gut lacks that internal sanctuary. And when a post-appendicectomy patient faces a major gut disruption, their microbiome is significantly slower to recover and often struggles to fully restore its original bacterial diversity. And over the long term, studies show that appendicectomy patients often display a distinct depletion of essential butyrate-producing bacteria, which weakens their intestinal wall. The appendix also contains an exceptionally high concentration of gut-associated lymphoid tissue, GALT, G-A-L-T, which acts as a specialized training ground for immune cells. So removing this tissue changes localized immune signaling, and the resulting shift can cause the immune system to either under-respond to pathogens or over-respond to normal food particles, leaving the gut lining vulnerable to chronic low-grade inflammation. And because of these combined factors, people who have had their appendix removed carry a higher risk of irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, C. diff infection, and possibly even colorectal cancer. Now, I know that so much of the things I've been talking about that disrupt our gut microbiome, you can't change because they happened in the past. You can't change how you were born. You can't change whether or not you were breastfed. You can't change how many courses of antibiotics you've had. You can't reinsert your tonsils or appendix. But there is so much that you can do right now. So you know the good news is coming. You know that there are, well, you might not know, but I'm telling you, there are so many ways to rectify your gut, so please hang in there. That's what today's Brain Booster will be about. We just need to get through the bad stuff first. And I'm only going to mention 4 more things that disrupt our gut, and they're all things you have control over. Processed foods, emulsifiers, preservatives, and artificial sweeteners. And each of these could be a podcast episode on their own, and probably will be. But for now, just a few points on each. At this point, I had to stop the podcast recording because I ran out of time and had to catch a plane. And now that I'm back, my voice has become a bit croaky. But I didn't want you to miss an episode, so I apologise that I might sound a bit rough for the rest of this recording. As they say, the show must go on. Processed foods, I should be more precise and say ultra-processed foods, abbreviated UPFs, like packaged sweets, sugary drinks, ready-made meals, breakfast cereals, sauces, even supermarket breads, are highly toxic to our gut microbiome. Because rather than containing nourishing nutrients, these foods are stripped of the natural fibre they contain and loaded with chemicals and synthetic additives that you'd never cook with yourself because they're just not contents of a household pantry. And this combination starves beneficial bacteria and directly poisons the intestinal ecosystem. Emulsifiers are particularly hazardous to our gut. An emulsifier is a substance that helps mix two liquids that normally don't blend well together, such as oil and water. So they help to create a smooth texture and extend shelf life. And they're estimated to be present in up to 60% of all commercially packaged foods. That's massive. And it includes mayonnaise, margarine and other butter alternatives, not butter itself, creamy store-bought sauces like gravies, hollandaise and pasta sauces, some, not all peanut butters, read labels, ice cream and frozen desserts, most plant-based milk alternatives, again, not all, but most, coffee creamers and whipped toppings, processed cheese slices, packaged bread and buns, cakes, pastries, cookies, most chocolate bars, deli meats, sausages, hot dogs, and ready-to-eat meals. And the reason that pre-packaged, frozen, or chilled dinners rely heavily on emulsifiers is to survive the freezing, thawing, and reheating process without turning watery or clumpy. So what do you look for in a food's ingredient list to know whether it contains an emulsifier? Because food manufacturers rarely use the word emulsifier. Emulsifiers are listed by their chemical names or European E numbers. And the most common ones to spot on ingredient lists include lecithin, or specifically soy or sunflower lecithin, mono and diglycerides of fatty acids, polysorbate 60 and polysorbate 80, carboxymethylcellulose, CMC, or cellulose gum, carrageenan, and xanthan gum, guar gum, or gum arabic. And why are they so bad for our gut? They act like detergents. They physically dissolve the protective mucus barrier that lines your intestines, which brings gut bacteria into direct contact with the underlying intestinal epithelial cells. And this triggers chronic low-grade gut inflammation and contributes significantly to a leaky gut. So that's the problem with emulsifiers: inflammation and leaky gut. Then we've got industrial food preservatives like sodium benzoate, potassium sorbate, sulfites. Now they are explicitly designed to kill or inhibit microbial growth to keep packaged food from spoiling. And yes, that's necessary. However, these chemical preservatives can't distinguish between harmful mold on a supermarket shelf and the beneficial bacteria living inside your colon. So if we ingest them on a regular basis, these preservatives exert a steady, low-dose antimicrobial effect inside your digestive tract, and they slow down the replication and survival rates of good guys like bifidobacterium and lactobacillus. Then we've got artificial sweeteners, specifically, because there are different types, but I'm just going to talk about non-caloric artificial sweeteners like saccharin, sucralose, and aspartame. Even though they pass through the upper digestive tract without being absorbed as calories, they are actively metabolized by microbes in the colon. The consequence of which is a profound dysbiosis, an imbalance in your community of microorganisms characterized by a sharp drop in beneficial bacteroidetes and a surge in pro-inflammatory firmicutes. And this specific microbial shift alters how your body processes energy. It directly drives glucose intolerance, insulin resistance, and metabolic syndrome. Another class of artificial sweeteners are sugar alcohols, also called polyols, like xylitol, sorbitol, maltitol, and mannitol. And their impact on the microbiome ranges from mildly prebiotic to highly disruptive, depending on the dose. But I would stay away from them. By the way, despite the name, sugar alcohol, they don't contain any everyday alcohol like ethanol. They're actually a unique type of carbohydrate. And as for what are termed natural sugar alternatives, namely stevia, monk fruit, and allulose, so far, and the operative word is so far, the evidence does not show an increase in dysbiosis. However, there just isn't a lot of research on them, but at the moment, they're probably your best bet. So we are done with bad news. It's all a good news story from here, because regardless of what might have hammered your gut in the past, there's a lot you can do to restore it in the present. And that's what today's Brain Booster is all about. Today's Brain Booster is mend your microbes. Your body has two incredible systems that help you adapt and survive in a changing world. And those two systems are one, neuroplasticity, which you've heard a lot about, and two, microbial plasticity. Neuroplasticity, just to recap, is your brain and nervous system's ability to rewire its connections when you learn or experience something new or heal from an injury. Microbial plasticity is your gut's ability to quickly change its mix of bacteria and the chemicals they make based on what you eat, the medications you take, how well you've slept, how regularly you exercise, and how stressed you are. Both systems, neuroplasticity and microbial plasticity, work like continuous learning programs to keep you healthy, shape your behaviour, and make your body resilient. And even though one system uses electrical signals in the brain, that's neuroplasticity, and the other uses digestion in the stomach, they work in surprisingly similar ways. Firstly, both your brain and your gut have a critical setup phase early in life. Your brain does its most intense rewiring during childhood. Similarly, your gut microbiome has a crucial window before age 5 where it's highly flexible and easily shaped by its environment. And secondly, neuroplasticity and microbial plasticity both follow the use it or lose it and train it to regain it rules. Your brain builds stronger pathways for habits you repeat often, while clearing away connections you don't use. Your gut bacteria do the exact same thing based on your food. If you eat a lot of fibre, the bacteria that love fibre will rapidly multiply. If you starve them or take antibiotics, those vulnerable bacteria get wiped out. I just find it so fascinating that your brain and gut form the ultimate team. They're in constant communication, which you now know is through a direct hotline called the gut-brain microbiome axis. When your gut bacteria change what they're doing, they create vital brain chemicals and vitamins which travel to the brain to help grow new brain cells and protect your mental health. When you experience mental stress or trauma, your brain sends signals that change how fast your stomach moves, that weaken your gut wall and alter your immune system. This instantly forces your gut bacteria to shift. And that means if you had a gut-wrenching start in life, literally, all is not lost. Don't lose heart if you had a shaky start, because we are not passive victims of our genes, our past, or our microbes. Even though our microbiome is largely established by the age of 3 years, our internal ecosystem continues to be influenced by every single thing we do on a daily basis. Always remember that just as your brain is plastic, so is your gut and its microbial residence. So what can you do now to bring your gut to better health, regardless of what's happened in the past? Here are my top 7 calls to action. Number 1, prioritize getting good sleep. Researchers have measured the quality and quantity of people's sleep and then looked at whether or not it had any relation to the composition of their gut bacteria. What did they find? A two-way street. Better sleep leads to increased microbial diversity, while poor gut health is associated with worse sleep. Improve one and you'll automatically improve the other. 2, move to improve every day. 2 studies led by researchers at the University of Illinois have delivered clear evidence that the composition of gut bacteria can be changed by physical exercise alone. How incredible is that? The first study was with mice, and the second study was with humans. In both cases, i.e., mice put on an exercise program and people asked to do 3 hours of aerobic exercise a week for 6 weeks, which averages out to only half an hour a day. Both the mice and human exercises increased the diversity of their gut microbes and the numbers of butyrate-producing microbes, all good for our gut and overall health. But here's the catch. If they stopped exercising after 6 weeks, which was how long the study lasted, the positive effects started to wear off. So stay active for life and you'll keep your microbiome healthy for life. The third way to improve our gut health. If you never had a pet and weren't allowed to play in the mud, it's not too late. An adult can still improve their gut microbiome diversity and overall health by introducing a dog, spending time in gardens and parks, and physically interacting with nature. While a childhood spent indoors impacts the initial programming of our immune system, our adult microbiome remains a highly dynamic, adaptable ecosystem. Entering wilder spaces allows airborne microbes, called the aerobiome, to land on your skin, enter your respiratory tract, and find their way into your gut. Spending time digging in soil or gardening forces physical inoculation. Touching raw earth transfers diverse bacterial phyla, such as actinobacteria and proteobacteria, into your system. And this micro-exposure can actually counteract the decline in microbial diversity that's observed as we age. When we garden, we also inhale a bacteria from the soil called Mycobacterium vaccae, which stimulates the production of serotonin in our gut. Physically climbing trees, touching bark, and being in dense green spaces exposes you to what's known as phyllosphere microbiota. That's just a fancy name for microorganisms that live on plant surfaces. And when you inhale these airborne bacteria and fungi, many of them safely pass through your stomach acid and increase your microbial diversity. Trees also emit compounds called phytoncides. And when we inhale phytoncides, it decreases levels of the stress hormone cortisol, and it shifts adult gut communities away from pro-inflammatory profiles. Number 4, avoid microbial disruptors. Antibiotics, antacids, other medications I talked about, as much as you possibly can. 5, eat real whole food. Remember, every meal is an opportunity to heal. 6, drink plenty of water. And 7, manage stress. Is this starting to look like my True Medicines acronym or what? The advice you will notice is always the same, whether it's health, brain health, or heart health. And if you don't know what I mean by the acronym True Medicines, please listen to podcast episode 3. Today's weather report is from Manon.
I'd like to know whether I should get a microbiome home test or not. I know the evidence is not clear yet, and scientific papers have shown that is an unregulated field with controversial findings. Yet, how else can we know what is wrong with our gut?
Thank you very much, Manon, because your question actually prompted me to do this entire gut series. And my short answer to your question is no. Don't waste your time and money on a microbiome home test. Why? Microbiome home tests are direct-to-consumer kits that analyse a stool sample to identify the microorganisms living in your digestive tract. Some of these kits or tests, or companies that produce them, also provide dietary advice based on your results. However, as you said, the scientific consensus highlights a huge gap between what these tests promise and what they actually deliver. The first point is that your gut microbiome changes constantly based on your recent meals, sleep quality, exercise, and stress levels. So a single snapshot can't capture your stable baseline ecosystem. Secondly, there is no universally agreed upon standard for what a perfectly healthy microbiome looks like. Every individual's microbiome is a unique fingerprint, so comparing your results against a generic standard is completely scientifically flawed. Different countries tend to favour different microbial species. If you live in Japan, you have a very different mix of microbes in your body than if you live in Australia. And the various mixtures of microorganisms can all be healthy. Thirdly, a study published by the National Institute of Standards and Technology gave 7 major direct-to-consumer gut testing companies the exact same sample of faeces. Between those 7 companies, they found 1,200 types of gut bugs. But all 7 companies agreed on only 3 of them. 3 out of 1,200 is laughable. Not only that, in some cases, identical samples sent to the exact same company yielded completely different reports, with one being flagged as healthy and the other as unhealthy. So if a microbiome test doesn't provide any meaningful information, how do you know if there's something wrong with your gut? Your body communicates gut distress through noticeable changes in your digestion and overall well-being. So some of these signs include persistent changes in your stools. Do you have ongoing diarrhea, constipation, or alternating between both? Do you have chronic bloating and gas? Do you have blood in your stools? That's serious. Go to a doctor, get a serious stool test and even a colonoscopy if you have blood in your stools. Do you have unexplained weight loss, constant reflux or heartburn, abdominal pain, whether that's a dull ache, sharp pain, or intermittent cramping? If you exhibit any of these symptoms, see a doctor and get the appropriate tests. And that could include blood tests, stool tests, which are completely different to the home microbiome tests I've just slammed, breath tests, and endoscopy or colonoscopy. Now, the stool tests that your doctor orders check specifically for dangerous parasites, harmful bacteria like Clostridium difficile, or high levels of calprotectin, a protein that indicates your intestines are physically inflamed. As for breath tests, these measure gases in your breath to accurately diagnose specific conditions like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, acronym SIBO, or lactose intolerance. And with an endoscopy or colonoscopy, a specialist uses a very small camera to physically look at the lining of your digestive tract. And this allows them to see inflammation, ulcers or polyps, and take tiny tissue samples called biopsies to confirm diagnoses like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. If you don't have any of the specific symptoms I mentioned, or You've had every gut test known to modern medicine and nothing comes up as being amiss, but you still don't feel quite right, or you think that other symptoms like chronic fatigue or brain fog or autoimmune conditions might be linked to your gut, take action on today's Brain Booster and go through my acronym True Medicines to see if any of the other factors in my list apply to you. My overriding message is keep feeding, watering, and weeding your inner garden, and you will eventually see positive changes. Great health is not a distant destination, it's a daily choice. As the Buddha taught, each morning we are born again. What we do today is what matters most. Thank you so much for listening and for sending me your weather questions. I will get to them all in due course. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode, and I look forward to sharing with you another Brain Booster, health headline, missing medical marvel, and weather report next week. Please note that this podcast is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice and is not intended to provide specific guidance for any particular situation. The use of this information is at the viewer and listener's own risk and is not a substitute for consulting a healthcare provider.